We're now going to look at adding some colour rendering. Okay, so we're going to do this by using marker pens. So we've got a range of different types and makes of marker pen. The most common one that we can find out in Thailand is Copic or Copic. We've got two different styles here. Copic markers are considered the best, although they also are generally more expensive. In terms of markers, some of you may have your own, or you can buy them from B2S. The thing to look out for with markers is that ideally they are spirit-based or alcohol-based markers because the ink flows much better. Now, in terms of this sheet, we have a limited amount of sandy colour, brown colours and so on. So it is possible to do all of this using a grey colour as well, and I will demonstrate that as well. So what we'll do is we'll just use our sandy coloured marker to begin with, so I can demonstrate how we use markers. So we're going to use the chisel tip. This is the chisel tip. On the other side, you either have a point or a brush. On the small ones, these ones here, you tend to have a brush like that on one end. We're trying to avoid that. That's more for fashion design that was invented. So we're going to use the chisel tip. The important thing is to, when you're not using it, to put the top on and hear the snap properly, because that stops them drying out. So the way that we use markers is we try to use them quickly to cover quite a large area. So I'm going to demonstrate this slowly for you, but I should ideally be going quicker than this. So what we want to do is try and follow the flow of our work. So just looking at where our timberline is. Now, the trick with markers is ideally not to go so slow, because otherwise we get these kind of weird little lines. Because the marker paper keeps the ink wet for longer, that means that we can actually blend in much of the tone. Don't worry about going out of the lines. And then typically what we use as a standard rule is that all edges are always dark. So we're going to go over our edge once more. Now turn the page, make life easier. Turn the page. All edges always dark. And then what we have to do with marker is let that dry. So while that's drying for the first coat, I'm going to use this colour, warm grey 4 marker, to the one next to it, just to show you that we can use other colours. They don't have to just be brown colour. So same again. Now this is warm grey 4. Warm grey has brown in it. It's like a standard grey, but with brown. We have quite a number of this pen because we use grey as a tone a lot. And then before it dries, let's add some long strokes. Try with markers, if you can, to add long strokes rather than short ones. Short ones will leave marks on your work. Again, does not matter at all if it goes out of the shape. Okay, and I'll do the other one that's just on this page. I'll do this in a totally different brown. This is a much more reddy brown colour. Okay, so we can use any one of these colours. So I'll do this one. Again, looking at my timber split line. All edges are always dark, so let's go this. This one is clearly dried out, which is not a good demonstration. Let's try a second one, and hopefully this one hasn't dried out. So we'll go across. All edges always dark. There's my edge. So this time what I'm doing, notice I'm doing a different style this time. So this one, I'm going to go around my edges to begin with. And you can see it's a much more reddy brown colour. But these are supposed to be holes going through my work. So I also go around the edge of the hole. Okay, like this, just fill in any gaps. Something like that. And then once I've just done my edges, then let's just now do long flowing lines. If you go over the holes, it is not a problem. Okay, and long. And what we're trying to do is keep the ink moving around on the page. rather than let it dry. This is why we're using marker paper. If we were using normal paper, what the problem we would end up having is that the ink would dry, it soaks through on the paper, and it makes a real mess. So you can see on this one, what I'm just doing, just while this is drying, is I'm just going around that edge again. Okay, and I don't like these little patches here, they're just darkened, so I'm just going to, with my marker, go over them. Now, I'm not just going to keep going. Notice I've stopped now. So we tend to do one coat of marker, then we let it dry. This one is now dry, then we can do a second coat. And with the second coat, it'll go a little darker, but it allows us to add more tone in different areas. So typically, when we try to render, we try to render as though light is coming from the top left up here. So that means that this side of our shape, always we try to add a bit more shadow to, a bit more darkened tone. So that'll be the same on this one, the same on this one, and so on. So top left, so we keep this side slightly lighter, this side slightly darker. But we remember our rules, all edges are always dark. So let's start off. First thing that we do, we're going to go over that edge where there is a split line, okay? Something like that. I'm going to turn it round, and this time, this edge, but I'm going to bring this in more on this side. So you see my strokes, and hope, I don't know if you can see, there's a slight shine with the marker. That's because this time the marker is not soaking into the paper quite as much because there's already marker on the paper. Okay, like that. And then I'm just going to do a couple of lines just going across it to add, I call interest or tone. Okay, then I've done that. That needs to dry. I shouldn't try and work on it anymore at this stage. Then now, as you can see, so now I'm going to do my grey. So we keep moving on. So we don't just stop and stare and look at our work. Okay, let's turn it round. Same kind of process. Let's do the bottom. Now, the other rule is that the bottom of an object is always darker than the top because it's usually further away from the light. So we always try to add a little bit more marker on the bottom. So that one's done. And you'll see that some of the markers, they go much darker. So this one is quite a light one. This is a very light marker. This one is very dark. The problem with using dark colours is you can often make mistakes and they're very difficult to kind of correct. So if we're using a darker marker colour, we've got to try and be fairly careful. Let's go around my edges. Let's go around my edges. All edges are always dark. Okay, then the bottom of the object, let's add a bit more marker to the bottom of my object. Let's add a couple of tonal lines to make life interesting and make a shape interesting. Okay, just something like that. Okay, while that one's drying, now we can do our last little bit of work on this one. So our last little bit of work is we're going to darken this bottom edge. And the thing with marker pen is you can only do it 3 times at the very most. Beyond that, nothing happens. You just keep adding marker to your paper and it just gets shiny and it starts to crinkle the paper. So I'm just going to do on this last one, just on my edges. And that's it. Okay, I'll do the same on the grey. Okay, always checking that I've got which side I've got of the pen. Okay, so just on my edge, just as a finishing one. Let's just add a couple of extra lines. Let's darken this side that little bit more. And you generally don't see a huge amount of change on the third coat. Okay, and then lastly, this one just about dried. So we'll go and we're just going to add a little bit more at the bottom, like this, and perhaps a little bit more here. I've got quite a range of tone going on inside my work here, so pretty happy with that. That'll do. Okay, obviously I need to do the ones at the bottom, but we'll just stop at that for the moment. Then what we're going to do is look at adding our wood grain effect onto these designs, and of course our resin effects up here.